tiene apagado su micrófono, maestra Damián.
Hola, bienvenidos a todos a este mes de Enalteciendo la Licenciatura en Idiomas. El día de hoy vamos a tener una actividad de dos de nuestras alumnas para que conozcan el talento motolinía y también, ¿por qué no?, lo que hacen también nuestros docentes. El día de hoy tengo el gusto de presentarles a la maestra Paola Gardea, quien les va a dar el comienzo para este webinar tan interesante. So, good luck, maestra Paola.
Thank you very much, Professor Damien. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar, Eastern and Western Culture. As our Professor Damien has already said, November has been the month to prize the language degree in Universidad Mutolínea del Pedregal. That's why Dana and Mariana, students from the fourth term, have prepared a special webinar to compare these important cultures. They'll let us know how the Eastern and Western cultures have influenced one another, and they also analyze the stigmas that exist towards them. But first, I want to introduce to you Mariana and Dana. Mariana Alejandra Levy Lopez is a 19-year-old student. She has a growing interest in Asian culture, especially China and Japan. For this reason, she started studying Japanese in high school and has been doing it for 6 years. She's also planning to study Mandarin. And in the future, Mariana would love to work on something that allows her to build cultural relations between Mexico and Japan. Besides the language degree in Universidad Mutolínea del Pedregal, Dana Marlene Sarco Sandoval is also a philosophy student at Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México. She has finished her credits and is in the process of writing her thesis. Additionally, she is an English teacher and has worked in translation projects. She would love to have a career in academic research in philosophy, and she would like to work as a literary translator. Well, we are so excited to listen to you girls, and welcome everybody.
Thank you so much, Pao. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. So I'm going to share my screen. Just give me 1 second, please. Okay, well, so as Pao already said, we are going to talk about Western and Eastern culture. And well, I really hope you enjoyed the topic, and we would really love to hear you participate at the end of all the topics. So if you could just open your microphones at the end and help us with the conclusions, it would be amazing. But let's start. Now, the first thing that we are going to do is we're going to compare Eastern and Western cultures and take a look at how they have influenced one another. This in order to analyze the stigmas that exist towards Eastern culture from a Western point of view. Maranita, would you like to explain the table of contents for everyone?
Sure, Dana, thank you very much. Okay, so as you can see here, we have our table of contents. And first, we are going to give you guys a small introduction on the East and West dichotomy. We are going to explain how it works and how it is divided culturally. Then we're going to take a look at the mutual influence that one culture had, how Eastern culture has influenced Western culture and vice versa. And well, apart from this, we also want to, before we start getting into influences, we have to compare a little bit of these cultures, and then we can talk about the mutual influences they have between one another. And after that, we have the core, or the main core of this webinar, which is the stigmas and the views of the East from a Westerner's perspective. We're going to analyze what negative views Westerners have against Eastern culture, but most importantly, why these stigmas happen. And finally, we're going to give our conclusions on the topic. We are going to give our final thoughts on the topic. And as my fellow colleague Dana already said, we would love if you could participate with us in this final thoughts.
With the East and West dichotomy. First, we need to understand what is the Western. Now, it is a really common term nowadays. I don't think anybody has any problem just figuring out what is the meaning of Western. But it never, it's good for us to start with a definition of it. Historically, Europe was regarded as the West. Nowadays, however, the West has been divided into three different categories: the core area, the marginal area, and the area of Western influence. And well, if we think about it, it pretty much covers all over the world. The core area is Australia and New Zealand, and the center part of Europe. The marginal area, well, and also the United States. The marginal area covers what is all Latin America and the Caribbean. So it's all the other part of American continent. And the area of Western influence are all of these countries that may be part of Asia or that are some, of Africa, but they have a Western influence. It can be related to food, it can be related to technology, perhaps education, the way they dress, or things like that. So it's mostly influence. In this area, we have India, we have Singapore, some Saharan African countries, Mongolia, the Pacific Island, Hong Kong, and all of those countries. Some people might say, some also, that Japan, Korea, and China might be part of the Western influence, but we're not going to say that because that is going to be part of our topic. So we're just going to compare what are the differences and the influences between Western and Eastern. But to start, Western, and the part we are going to focus on, it's pretty much United States, Central Europe, and Latin America, because are the cultures that we are most close to and the ones we have more information about nowadays, and also personal experience, not from Mariana and I.
Okay, so now the eastern part of the world, both geographically and cultural wise, the East is mostly constituted by the Asian continent. Geographically, of course, it depends on which side you're looking on, but if you look at a regular planisphere or a regular map, you'll mostly see that geographical wise, it is constituted mostly by Asia. But cultural wise, however, some Northern African countries and most of the Middle East are also part of the East.
Now, I think it's important that we make this difference. As Mariana said, there is a difference between what it's called the East and the West geographically. So we're going to approach this topic from a cultural perspective rather than a geographical one. That is why we are going to involve different countries and we are going to leave out other countries. So because it's, talking about all of the countries in the world is going to be too much. So we're just going to focus on the main ones, the principal ones. And so you don't get like lost in this. It's just something that a limit that we decided for our investigation.
Yolita, before you go to the next one, I would just like to well, Africa, as you can see, Africa is in a white color. And first I was a little bit disturbed by that. I thought that they were like excluding Africa, but come to think about it, Africa, it has both of Eastern world and Western world. I'm pretty sure most African countries are Western influenced, but as I said before, some Northern Africas are also Eastern, are more part of the Eastern world. So I just wanted to clarify that, why Africa was in a white color. But thank you very much, Dana.
Yeah.
Okay, and now moving on. The West and the East have each simultaneously developed a culture of their own. Throughout history, they have been very separate apart geographically, and so they have developed different traditions, different cultures, different ways of thinking, and different ways of seeing the world as well. However, they've had contact for a lot of years now. For example, if you've studied the period of the Renaissance, moving some years back, you will know that during the Renaissance, in this part of history in which science and knowledge started to flourish once again after the so-called Dark Middle Ages. Well, science and other knowledge flourished a lot during the Renaissance, but this couldn't have been done if it weren't for some Eastern knowledge. Because if you have studied the period, you will know that a lot of documents and a lot of the books were translated and were brought from Middle East and from the Eastern part of the world to Europe. So they have influenced one another in a lot of ways throughout history. But I think I would like to give you guys a very important concept for this presentation, which is Orientalism. And Orientalism is the study and representation of the East in a stereotyped and exotic way from a Western perspective. So during imperialism, which wasn't that long ago, let's take 19th century. During imperialism, in which English colonies were started to spread around the world, and England just started taking colonies everywhere around the world, many Europeans went to the East, from Europe to the East, and because they wanted to explore these lands. And some of them were writers or artists or painters. For example, these two paintings you see here are Orientalist paintings because they are made by people Europeans, Westerners, who went to the Middle East during imperialism to explore and get to know these cultures. But as you can see, they are very stereotypically depicted. And I don't mean to say that these places don't actually exist, because they do. But the thing is that this has carried on for years, and many people think that, I don't know, for example, that Africa is just animals, zebra, lions, and giraffes, for example, even though Africa is more westernized, but it's still a victim of this Eurocentric view. But what I think, well, this concept is very important, because even though it's focused mostly on the Middle East, we can also apply it to Asia, because the views on Asia are very stereotyped. For example, in this painting in the right, you can see some, I think, I don't know if you can see them from there, because I have like the zoom bar that is blocking my view, but there are some animals, I believe there are deers on the low right corner. And those animals, this is supposed to be a painting of the capital of Syria, but these animals don't even exist there. So the thing is that these paintings were Europeans were fascinated by what they saw in these lands. They were very fascinated, but in a way they were fascinated by a distorted reality that they recreated throughout these paintings. And so, okay, so why am I telling you all of this? Because it's very important to analyze where these stigmas against Asian culture or Eastern culture come from. And the fact that there is a study of there's a term to call the study of the East in a stereotype and exotic way means it's something that it's big. Thank you, Dana.
Yes, absolutely. I believe also that this is not just from the Renaissance. No, even nowadays, we also have this type of idea from Asian countries, but more on to that later. Now, we're going to talk about the mutual influences that we believe and we have recollected through our research. Our premise is that East and West have influenced one another in several ambits throughout the years. This is not something that started in the past and nowadays it's not happening. No, we believe that also nowadays it's harder than ever. No, the influence is bigger than it has ever been. So we're going to discuss that about East and West.
Okay, so it is known that East and West think in profoundly different ways, right? Because in East, everything is collective, and in the West, everything is individual. Sarcasm aside, the East is a collective society. It's based on collectivism, and the West is based on individualism. This is why, this is because the East looks more, you know that Eastern people are believed to be very polite towards one another. But that's because they have a culture in which they do things for society and not for themselves. They do things because society tells them to do it, and they do things because they are told to do it. And it's, the interactions between people in the East are very, very polite, and some of them don't even like, for example, hugs or physical contact, but not because they are rude, but because they culturally they are respecting each other. And the West, for example, is more individual in the sense that it wants people to be themselves and to stand out more from society, not really work as a society, but the West wants you to stand out from society. This is why there is a stigma that the West is, because the West is considered to be more free. Note the quotation marks, because are we really free? I don't think so. But stereotypically, this is why the East is sometimes considered to be not as free as Western cultures. It's because of this different collective and individual cultures. For example, in the East, hierarchy is very important. When you're working in an enterprise, for example, you respecting your boss is extremely important. I'm not saying that it isn't important in the West, but for example, in the East, it goes to such lengths that sometimes employees are even afraid to ask questions because they don't want to seem rude to their boss. And in the West, for example, is more common that bosses in enterprises wanted their employees to ask questions because they want them to stand out. So I'm not saying, I don't think one is better than the other. It's just different ways of interacting between themselves. The East also has more reliance on indirect or nonverbal communication, while the West has a more use of direct and concrete language to get a point across. In Japan, for example, I'm sorry, I'm going to bring up Japan a lot because it's a culture I've actually studied, and I studied the language, so I know more about how it works. So in Japan, for example, there is a term that is tatemae, which literally can be translated as the facade of a building, like the outer part of a building. And this is like a mask people put on against society. And someone with that has a tatemae, for example, can be very polite to you, but when he or she arrives home, he or she talks pests about you, for example. And in the West, I mean, I'm not saying there aren't hypocrites in the West, because there are. I'm not saying there aren't, but we're talking like from a systematical and cultural, structural point of view. And in the West, I mean, you don't like someone and you just tell them to cough. So it's there is a more direct and concrete language to get a point across in the West, and in the East, it's a little bit more discreet. And also, well, just one last point. In the East, punctuality is of the utmost importance, and on the West, it's relatively common to adhere to flexible hours. I think that in both cultures, punctuality is important. I'm not saying it isn't important in the West, but in the East, punctuality is extremely important. And in the West, it's like, well, it's a little bit more flexible. So knowing this scene of differences, now we are going to see how they have come to influence each other via contact throughout history. And first, well, we're going to start talking about how the West has influenced Eastern culture. So starting with the tip of the iceberg, the more superficial things. Nowadays, Asian countries celebrate holidays that are popular in the West. So, for example, China, Japan, India, Vietnam celebrate Christmas. A lot of Asian and Eastern countries celebrate Christmas, even if it's not really an official holiday for them, but they do celebrate it. And I'm just going to give you a fun fact here. In Japan, it's a tradition to eat Kentucky Fried Chicken on Christmas. It's very weird. I mean, you can, like, why Kentucky Fried Chicken on Christmas, right? I don't know the story, so I'm not going to tell you the reason why, because I don't know the story of why. I'm pretty sure it began with a marketing campaign, but I'm not very sure. But it's weird to think about it, because Japan used to be like a very close country. It still is, but it used to be even like more secluded. But it has opened in such a way that Kentucky Fried Chicken is eaten traditionally on Christmas. I think that's extremely funny. But anyways, There are other countries that do not celebrate Christmas. For example, Thailand doesn't celebrate Christmas. And the Philippines do. They do celebrate it, but the Philippines centers Christmas more on religion and not really like on Santa Claus, presents, reindeers, and jingle bells. It's more like a religious festivity. And also new generations in some Asian countries are standing up against traditional values, like, for example, and they are going to more, sorry, but it's okay, no worries, no worries.
Yeah.
No worries, no worries. Okay, so as I was saying, new generations in some Asian countries are standing up against traditional values, and they are being influenced by more Western values, like the ones we talked about in the last small topic. Like, for example, they are going more for Western selfishness, not really collective, but more individual selfishness. They are looking to be in a more outgoing society. And some of them, I'm pretty sure it was in India, they are going, they want to have a nuclear family. And like nuclear family is being with basically with your partner and with your daughter and son. But it's just that in India, for example, it's more traditional that they live with everyone, with grandparents, with cousins, with a lot of family, but they are going more towards the Western view of family, and they are looking to get more into a nuclear family. And well, it's true that some countries have retained more important traditional aspects of their identity, and some others have lost more of their identity. But in the end, they have the West has influenced Eastern culture throughout the years, and it continues to do so even today. And I'm just going to give you like a fun fact of Japan again. The Japanese word for milk in Japanese is gyunyu, but many the youth, like many teenagers don't say gyunyu anymore. They say miruku, which comes from English milk. And adults hate it because they say that the new generation is doomed and that traditional values are doomed. But I think it's very cool how the West has influenced Eastern culture and how it continues to do so even today.
Now, what about the East? How the East has influenced the Western culture? I'm gonna leave aside all the K-pop influence and the musical influence, idols and all that part, because we're going to talk about that in another topic, in the stigma part. So I'm just gonna focus on the influences, talking about way of living and some attitudes towards life. So as Mariana told us before, the East is mostly recognized as part of the world when everyone it's more important to be part of a community. Collectivism is important, and Western culture is more individualistic. And this is so clear in, for example, here in Mexico or in our culture. Everybody has to be like standing up from everybody else, has to be the best in whatever she is or he is doing. So the East has influenced the Western in these particular attitudes. For example, we are independent here in the West, but in the East, they are interdependent. There is more of a sense of community and empathy towards the other. And some cultures or some of the things we have been learning from them is this interdependency, that not to look at it as a bad thing, but actually a good thing. That's why nowadays, whenever you see a coach telling people how to help each other, everybody is like, yeah, you need the other one. You need to be empathetic about the people, and not only about the people around you or the people who surrounded you. It's also an interdependency towards the planet, the place where you live. And we can also see this, for example, in architecture and also with our government. Before, and I'm not trying to take any political posture here, I'm just giving an example. Before, it was all about, yeah, Mexico has to be the best thing ever. Mexico has to be at the top of the world, just being side by side with the United States or even Europe and things like that. But nowadays, with the pandemic, with everything that has been happening to us, the main point is to think about the other one. That's why we use masks, not only to protect ourselves, but to protect the other. We do not go, or we weren't going to parties. We didn't celebrate Christmas last year. Well, at least many people didn't do it because we wanted to protect our elders, we wanted to protect the kids, and we wanted to protect other ones. So this interdependency at the end has been becoming part of our culture in some aspects, perhaps in job and professional stuff. It is not as clear, but when it comes to what is good for society, talking about healthy, for example, or talking about the sense of community, we can start seeing this type of influence. Another thing that we have from the East is, well, that they follow the right, keeping calm. And this is just a way of conducting in society. So these all little attitudes toward the other one, not to be disturbing, has also helped us. Now that's why, for example, whenever we are in a Zoom meeting, everybody is like, please keep your microphones off, because we don't want to disturb the people who is talking. We do not want to interrupt one another. And well, I don't know, I think those things, we can see them nowadays in the online life that we have. And well, the keeping calm, I don't have to even explain it. There are thousands of images just using keep calm and do this thing, or keep calm and eat tacos, or keep calm and whatever comes to your mind. And this phrase actually represents something that it's more Eastern than Western, but has become part of Western culture, the image of keeping calm. Another thing that also Mariana mentioned was the importance of traditions, and mostly in a country where there are none. For example, what comes to my mind is the United States. As you know, the United States, it's full of different countries because it's a country made by immigrants. So they don't actually have like a particular tradition, or like here in Mexico that we have, Independence Day, Dia de Muertos, that it's so Mexican. In the United States, they have different cultures. And what they are doing is that the people who live in the United States, the Americans, that have these two types of culture. They have American culture, but they also have Indian culture, Mexican culture, Chinese culture, whatever culture you can imagine. They are mixing them. So they are keeping their traditions, and they are making it part of their own lives in this new country they are calling home. So this is also that comes from the East. Now here in Mexico, we preserve our traditions, and we are really proud of who we are as Mexicans, and the traditions we have, and how we influence the world. But this part, it's also an influence from the East, because as Mariana said, they have really, well, the parents are getting mad just because the kids are learning how to say milk in English rather than in Japanese. So you can see this here. And I wanted also to talk about the importance of being in constant improvement to adjust your expectations. I know that this might be not such a good thing. We know all the rates in Asia related to the pressure of entering the university, to get a good job, to be someone in life, that the rates are really impressive, and it is really difficult to be there. The pressure is unbelievable. But certainly this attitude towards life, towards improvement, and towards being better, it is part of also nowadays of our Western culture. Certainly we do it more in an individualistic level, like I have to be better than my classmates, or a certain point. But in the East, it's more like I have to be better to make my family proud. I have to be better to help my family, sort of that, not related to that. And here in the West, we tend to do the same, but we care about us. We are like, yeah, I want to be better because I want, I want this, I would like to do this. So it's all the time I. And well, so this thing might be similar, and I know it can be targeted as a bad thing, but still it's part of an influence that we have. East and West has influenced one another, and even though there are some differences, it is also part of both cultures. The last one is a little bit more practical. I'm going to talk about making changes in the educational world programs for Easterns. As you know, nowadays it is really popular to just decide like, yeah, I want to go to Japan to study my master's degrees, or I just want to go to Japan to study something, or Korea, South Korea, or something like that. But there is also a large bunch of people that want to go to study at the United States, want to study in France, in Spain, well, in Europe, and here in Latin America. And that is creating that the universities are actually developing programs for Easterns, because they are aware that the amount of work that they have, a lot of work, and also the way of learning might be a little bit different. So they are trying to develop these programs to make the Easterners people more comfortable when they come here to study. So to speak, it's not like so they don't have to suffer this cultural shock so massively, you know. So they are actually making changes. And perhaps, while I was reading this research about the programs, this is happening in the United States mostly and in Europe. So the key here is that the programs for Easterns are just for Easterns. So it kind of opens the question whether it is okay to divide cultures if they are just sharing knowledge, they are sharing classes, or they are sharing, you know, the same experience. It is good to divide them, or should we just like make it even a little bit more neutral, or let Western people enter these programs? So, but certainly what we can recover from this is that Eastern culture and Eastern influence is so powerful that universities take it on account and they make changes on the way they study and they impart education, which is something to think about. Now, we wanted to talk about stigmas and views of the East, pretty much how a Westerner sees Eastern culture. No, Marielita, I think this part was Eastern culture.
Yes, my mistake.
Yeah, no, just to make it a little bit more clear. No, this part is kind of the bad part, the sad part of what comes to dividing cultures. So let's see what we have.
Okay, so first I would like to talk to you about the views the West has on Japan and South Korea. Why start with Japan and South Korea? Because these two countries have become extremely popular in the West in the last decades. And this is because, mostly because of the entertainment industry. I'm pretty sure the music industry in Japan is the biggest in the world. And well, apart from music, the entertainment industry of these two countries have become very popular in America and in the West in general, because, well, first, Japan brings us anime, which is very popular. It brings us manga, it brings us video games, and South Korea brings us music. As you all know, K-pop has become very popular. I think it's been popular for a while now, but I think it kind of boomed when BTS became popular. But yeah, that's when everyone started to. Before that, it was more like a culty, genre. Like people listen to K-pop, but it wasn't that popular. But then BTS came, and it was everywhere. I'm pretty sure you know about K-pop, even if you don't listen to it. So. Apart from the entertainment industry, apart from everything that these two countries bring us, the two of them are developed countries. So you see in the news, or when you do tourism in these countries, you see amazing and technological cities. And also, so this, I believe that, so yeah, these two countries are popular because of the entertainment industry, but I think there might be something more hiding behind the scenes. And this is just pure speculation of mine, but I believe that Japan and South Korea are also popular because they are different enough or exotic enough for a Westerner, but they are relatable enough for them because they are, Japan, for the Westerner, Japan is weird, quotation marks, because Japan isn't weird, it's just different. But I'm just like, that's something I want to clarify, by the way. When I say that Japan or Korea or Asia is weird, I'm not saying I think they are weird. I'm saying that many Westerners do think they are weird because of the difference in culture. So Japan and South Korea, especially Japan, are more Western influenced by Western culture that some other countries in Asia, for example, Thailand or the Philippines or Vietnam, India, etc. So these two countries are interesting and they are exotic enough for the Westerner to say, wow, what a cool country. But they are still relatable enough so they don't, and this makes them not have a negative stigma against them. Because yeah, it's different, but it's not that different. So it's not that weird like other Asian countries. that's pure speculation of mine, but I think it may be apart from the music and the anime and games, I think that may be a reason why these two countries have become more popular over here. And well, that said, now we're going to talk a little bit about negative views towards Asia, towards Eastern culture in general, but emphasis on Asia, stigmas. So the first one on the list, and I put it to be the first one on the list because it's something we are living right now, is coronavirus. And well, as you all know, coronavirus came from China. And I'm sure you've heard about the hashtag Stop Asian Hate that went viral like a year ago, I believe. And it's just that coronavirus increased racism towards Asian people. It didn't even matter if they were Chinese or not, as long as they had their eyes like how can I put it? As long as they had eyes like how Westerners don't have it, like
slightly closed.
Thank you very much, Dana. I didn't know how to say it. Thank you. But like, as long as they had slightly closed eyes, they were discriminated against. So coronavirus increased this a lot. And for example, I think like 3 days ago, I was taking a look at a post on Facebook that said that China was rapidly increasing towards #1 economy in the world. And the comments were very racist because they were like, oh, so first you brought coronavirus and now this? What's coronavirus have to do with anything? Like people just want to hate on China because of this, for the sake of hating on China. That's it. And well, also China has a different government. I don't want to get into Chinese government politics talk, but you know that the government of China is different from many Western cultures, but not only from Western cultures, also from many Asian cultures. But it's not only the fact that it's different, it's the fact that it works and it's making China go to the top. So that I think that has to do a lot with negative views that people have against China, for example. And also Asia has very different traditions for the Westerner. Not all of them, but there are traditions. For example, many Asian countries take off their shoes before they enter someone's house. And there's also the culture of they don't really like giving hugs or physical touch. And this is seen sometimes as conservative, as something that shouldn't be carried out anymore. So the Westerner also sees some Asian traditions as being different or as being weird. There are also a lot of non-Christian beliefs in Asia. And I think that Eurocentrism has led us to believe that Christianity is the only valid religion and that the others aren't. And as you know, in Asia, we have Taoism, we have Buddhism, we have Shinto in Japan. And these, many of these beliefs are also centered more on oneself, one's spirit, and also nature. Especially Shinto is very related to nature. And so these are more, the Westerner relates them more to pagan religions. So they see them as something that is outdated or something that isn't valid because it's not a European religion. There are also differences in consumable meat. And well, as you know, China, there is this stereotype that Chinese people eat dog meat. And it's not even like a traditional dish or anything. Like people treat it as if every single Chinese ate dog every day, but they don't. The thing is just, it's legal. In many Western countries, it's illegal to eat dogs. I don't know if in all of them, but in many of them it is. But in China, it isn't. That's it. It isn't illegal. It's legal to eat dog meat, but it's not like they eat it every day. And well, apart from that, that's also a very cultural thing. People get horrified at the thought of eating dogs because dogs are considered to be our friends, our company. But I mean, we eat cows. What's the difference between eating a dog and a cow? It's the same thing. And like, I mean, of course, I get very sad and horrified at the thought of eating a dog, but we have to keep in mind that it's entirely cultural. That's it. And well, there's also a sense of moral superiority. I was talking about this earlier. It also has to do with the fact that the West is more individual and the East is more collective, and so they believe that they are standing out while the East isn't. And well, I think this is the last point, but I think it's also very important, and is that non-developed or developing countries are frowned upon. So South Korea and Japan, as I told you, are they are very popular because of the music, of anime, and everything that they brought to us. But we also have to keep in mind that these countries are developed. And what we see on images is amazing buildings and amazing economy. But meanwhile, there are many countries in Asia that don't have that. So those, the fact that, for example, Philippines, the fact that Philippines isn't as popular as Japan and Korea, it may have to do with, of course, with the fact that they don't bring like entertainment industry to us, but it may have to do with the fact that that the countries are more poor. So these are some lists of stigmas, of negative views that Westerners have against Eastern culture. And that's all we have right now, but we want to open a discussion.
Yes. Thank you. So we have 3 questions, and we would like you to think about them a little bit and to tell us your opinion. No, we are going to share our thoughts at the end, but we would like to hear what you think, guys. So the first one is, what are the problems of assuming an economy between East and West? And is it valuable to differentiate the East from the West or vice versa? And if it, in our so cosmopolitan society, is it possible to even try to differentiate these 2 cultures, to separate them? So with everything that we have been saying and everything we have been talking, what do you think? Do you think that it is problematic? It is possible to differentiate it? Yes or no? I don't know. Whatever comes to your mind, guys.
I think that at this point of globalization and living in a multicultural world, there is not really any value in making such a big difference between East and Western cultures, I think, because I think that at this point it is all influenced by both type of cultures. Like we in the East there's part of the Western culture, and in the West there's part of the Eastern. So in my personal opinion, I don't think there should be such a harsh line between both of them.
Okay, thank you so much, Maria. Yes. Someone else would like to share their thoughts or give an opinion? Or not really?
May I? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, well, since the human civilization has existed for such a long while by now, everything is so minute in the details that it's even difficult to differentiate. Like there's really big differentiations. We're assuming a lot of things. For example, within the Western countries that we consider Western, there's lots of different ways to treat a problem or to have a cultural approach towards something. So yes, it's useful. I mean, because if we didn't do this big differentiations, we wouldn't be able to study anything. But it is very difficult to say with the utmost certainty that there's like this separation of cultures, because we are so integrated because of cosmopolitanism and just because of history, and that we all have a little part of and someone else's culture in us, and we share our own with the rest of our neighbors and whatnot. So it is very, very difficult, but it is nonetheless very interesting to study the origins and the major differences that could be identified between cultures.
Yeah, I'm muted. Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you so much, Cynthia. Someone else, or is it okay? Yeah, okay, just about that spot. So, after our research and everything that happened, we realized that it might be possible to separate cultures, but assuming a dichotomy can only create distance to decide which one is better or which one has more influence on the other.
Sorry, I thought you were asking the audience, but well, I think I agree with you all. I also agree that at this point in history, assuming a dichotomy is more harmful than good. The thing is that I think that we are in a part of history in which Eastern and Western culture are still different enough to be separated, but they are not as different as they used to be because of mutual influence. So I don't know, maybe in the future, if they continue to influence one another, then we can finally get rid of that dichotomy altogether.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. And also because this dichotomy nowadays has led to stigmas and xenophobia, now, as you told us, with the coronavirus situation and everything. And this was not only related to Chinese people, no, that there shouldn't be any stigma towards them, but it was to all Asian people. And well, it is really common to know that there is a stigma against Muslim people, that it's also from the East, and just because of the things that we have heard, you know, the 9/11, the 9/11, and things like that. But still, I mean, it doesn't justify the stigma, and it doesn't justify the xenophobia that some people have against Asian and Easterns. And also, in this part, Cynthia, we would have to disagree with you. We think that separating cultures is pointless because they are always changing and they are always influencing one another. Now, so it will be an endless task just to differentiate what is Eastern and what is Western. Now, even from the Renaissance and before that, there were some differences related to, I don't know, philosophy or mathematics or things like that. But pretty much what we study right now in mathematics, it can be considered Eastern. Now we study with Arabic numbers. So it's just that we think that might be a difference, there might be a difference, but it's still, it is pointless to separate these cultures. We can embrace them and we can embrace our own culture as Mexican, but I'm not quite sure we can embrace a Western culture, so to speak.
I actually agree with you there. It's just they are different enough to be separated, but they shouldn't. In reality, they shouldn't be. And I think that the main reason why we separate them is probably because of the media, because it's just media has portrayed, I think nowadays it isn't as frequent, but throughout the years, media has portrayed the East as something that is extremely different or exotic. And I don't know about nowadays how the media is with that, but at least we don't even have to go like too long ago. Like in my childhood, I grew up watching movies and watching cartoons that stereotyped Asian people, and not only Asia, but everything that isn't Europe or America. Actually, no, everything that is in Europe or North America. You know?
Yeah, pretty much. So we would like just like a final thought to embrace the cultural influences that we have among West and East and learn from all of them. So certainly we have seen that the cultures are really intertwined nowadays, so we can all learn from that. And well, I don't know if someone else has a question or a final comment or something they would like to say, but if not, thanks so much for your attention.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mariana. I think that you have talked about this amazing topic in a beautiful way. I think that we have to take into account all these thoughts that you provoke in us and reflect about this topic, because nowadays we are influenced by a lot of cultures, and we have, as you said before, that we have to embrace all of them, and we have to embrace our culture, our Mexican culture. And if we start to embrace other cultures, we start to hold our and to be more trying to be in this intercultural competence that as language professionals we have to have. Thank you very much. Thank you for the all the audience. And unfortunately, we don't have enough time to a question and answer section. But thank you very much to everybody. Thank you very much for all the people that is in social media. And thank you very much for being here. This is, I'm very proud of you. I really am. So now, Heidi from Extension, from Extensión Universitaria, has something to tell us. Heidi.
Hola, pues muchas gracias a todos. Muchas gracias por este espacio, por estas actividades del mes de Enalteciendo Idiomas. Agradecemos especialmente al director de la licenciatura de idiomas, al maestro Damián Gómez, por el apoyo a estos espacios, a nuestros queridos docentes, maestra Paola, y sobre todo a ustedes. Quiero permitirme leer el siguiente agradecimiento por parte de la Universidad Motolina del Pedregal. Agradecemos su valiosa participación a Alejandra Levi López y Dana Marlene Zarco Sandoval el día de hoy, viernes 26 de noviembre del 2021. Muchas gracias a todos ustedes por este espacio que nos regalan y nos comparten sus conocimientos. Quisiera recordarles que este mes tenemos nuestra última actividad del mes de Enalteciendo Idiomas, Lenguas y Culturas, y será el lunes 30 de noviembre. El webinar es Palabras Intraducibles, una reflexión filosófica a las 5 de la tarde con el maestro Alan Ruiz Cervantes. Entonces los esperamos. Muchas gracias a todos por su participación. Gracias, Dana. Gracias, Mariana. Gracias, Pau. Gracias, maestro Damián.
Gracias, Heidi. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.